Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Home Service Business Coach podcast. Today, very, very special guest, my buddy Robert Gauvreau. How we doing today, Bob?
Today is good. Every day as a business owner is a challenge. It's got its challenges, it's got its ups and downs, but today is one of those good days.
I love it, man. You are the expert in you're the money man. You run a very sizable accounting firm I want to hear about, man. And we wanted to bring you on the show because most trades business owners, they struggle to get their money right. And so I thought you'd be extremely qualified to come on and us just have a very practical, down-to-earth discussion that, the trades guys, the trades girls that are driving around can get some gold nuggets while they go to their next job and kind of adjust, man, how they think about money in their business. So how does that sound?
Sounds perfect. It just happens to be what I do and what I know. So I think we're good.
I love it. Well, before we dive, man, just tell us a bit about your business in the accounting world, because it's pretty cool what you've been able to build.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I'll give you the real short version. But like many of you who are watching, started my own business in 2008, left working at a large multinational firm and decided I wanted to work exclusively with business owners, home service businesses, professionals, and started with one employee. And now we're up to about 170, which is
Wow.
pretty amazing, exclusively around the business solutions required for business owners, right? Entrepreneurs. And so from anything from bookkeeping, taxes, financial reporting, CFO services, business coaching, we have legal services in Ontario. Essentially, everything that we can do to support a business owner from a professional services standpoint, we've created it essentially to be the one-stop shop to help support people be financially successful.
Wow, man, you guys are you're crushing it. I see your stuff everywhere. I know we're buddies on Instagram, and man, I'll just highlight as much business success as you've had. Like you're crushing it on the family front too. I see you post stuff going to your son's hockey games and events, and I think that's really the why of the success is to propel to do the stuff that really counts.
Yeah, and that, and I feel this obligation as a leader in many ways to live the life that I would hope others would get to live, but also to give my kids. I've got a 16-year-old son, Jack, a 14-year-old daughter, Sophia, to give them someone to look and say, okay, yes, you do have to work hard. Nothing really comes easy, but if you're smart and you do things the right way and you get the right guidance along the way, you can live a life that's truly fulfilling, right? Where you get to be a present parent, a good person. You don't have to be a bad guy to be a successful business owner. There's so much stigma attached to that. So for me, I want to be a little bit of a role model to my kids to say, you know what, there is more to life than work, but find something that you can do that you really love so it doesn't seem like work every day.
Yeah, I love that, man. Build a life you never got to retire from. And man, I'm pretty sure you've had like Tony Robbins as your coach too. Is that right?
I worked with Tony Robbins for 3 or 4 years. Yeah, he recruited our team. His business mastery events. Every year they would do three, I think two in the US and one in Europe. And he asked if we would be his Canadian partner of his Tony Robbins Global Accounting Advisors Group and come in and support the Canadians who attend his business mastery. So worked with Tony and his friends like Peter Diamandis, Jay Abraham, Keith Cunningham, like incredible people. So what a great experience that was. That definitely took my mindset from thinking small to thinking big. Cool
Yeah.
experience.
No, man, you're in a bigger room, and it shows with the business you're currently building is very, very inspiring to see. So let's kind of come to the level, man, that a lot of our listeners are at. Like, let's just start out. How much money should a home service business owner be making? Let's maybe paint a picture of a business owner doing, let's call it $1 million in home services. They've got proof of concept, Bob. They're maybe in their fourth year. They're building a team. Like, how would you go about answering, like, we pay everything? How much kind of money should we be having? Let's kind of start there.
Yep, great question. And I'll say it depends, but I'll give you some examples. I won't just leave it out there like some people would, but it depends on the phase of growth that you're in. And what I mean by that is when we are growing, like if you're $1 million home services business, but you're growing at 30 to 40% a year and you're reinvesting in that growth, then you're going to make less. right, than somebody who's been at $1 million for 10 years and they're streamlined and that's just what they want to do, right? They've got everything locked down, but they're not really keen on growing. They're just really systemized and profitable. Like, so let's look at that example for one.
Mhm.
In that case, we don't need excess capacity for people, right? So if we're not looking to grow, we can be as efficient as we possibly can be with labor. And what I would say is, depending on the type of home services business, the first thing that you have to understand is the profit margin that you have on your services. So, like for some home services, like electrical, for example, we get into electrician businesses, the profit margin on their service could be 40 to 50%, right?
Mhm.
And then there might be others where it's maybe a little bit more product intensive, where, like, let's say a landscaping business where they're doing like some heavy landscape with rock and it's pretty labor intensive. You might get a large project, but your margins might not be as big. Or if you're a union type business and you're going after union contracts, your margins are going to be somewhat predetermined based on the pricing that they give you. So
Mhm.
it really does depend there. And I would say the most important number, from my opinion, that you need to understand in your business is your gross profit margin. How
Yeah.
much as a percentage are you making on that service? And
Mhm.
so I kind of briefly talked about the million. I'll jump up to the million not growing, and I'll talk about
Mhm.
the million growing. So the million growing, when we're growing, we're likely having to invest in advance in resources like labor so that we can supply what's needed as we continue to grow and add more sales. So likely, if you're comparing the two, electrician to electrician, the growing business's margins are going to be lower because their labor costs are higher.
Right.
Now, that's sort of a bit of a cop out for me to not answer the bottom question, but I am going to answer the net income number for you too. When I
Yeah.
worked with Tony Robbins, regardless of whether you're growing or you're not growing, what he said is, as an investor in so many different businesses, and I agree with this, that's why I'm saying it, in investing in so many businesses that he's passively involved with, established businesses with management in place. So keeping in mind that usually means paying your salary and your team's salary in those numbers. The goal would be to get a 20% net income at the end of the day. Now, if
Mhm.
you're growing, it might be lower in the short term, but higher in the longer term because we're reinvesting in the next sort of level. So if you're not growing, you should be optimized at the 20, maybe 25% level.
Mhm.
We should be able to see that. If you're growing, maybe less than 20. Now, here's why it's important, because as many of us know, going through different economic times, kind of like what we're going through right now, which is
Yeah.
maybe the craziest unknown of where we're going to come out of this thing in the spring. I don't even know what to say about the way that the world is looking right now. But always when there's a downtime as a business owner, I feel optimistic about the long term outcomes of this.
Mhm.
But whenever we get into an economic situation where people are maybe having a harder time paying their bills, as business owners, we have to be very cautious of that 20%. Because if we have loan payments like our vehicles or our equipment that we're using, that's
Mhm.
cash flow out of our business. So 20% is before any of those loan payments are coming out.
Right.
And if we drop down to 10%, right? I call it the wind out of the west
Mhm.
sort of concern, is that if your profits drop down to 10% and you've got all these loan payments, it's like the perfect storm where cash flow gets really tight. And now you're
Mhm.
looking at how you're going to fund your payroll. So we
Yeah.
have to be cautious and aware of these. And I'll throw this little bit of plug in there too. Knowing your numbers is so important for your short-term and long-term success in your business. So
Yeah.
hopefully those benchmarks make sense.
Dude, that's killer. I love that I can just let you run with it and you almost answer the next question I have. I'm like, yeah, that's super good. So yeah, we teach on that too, Bob, to go for that 20% is kind of that holy grail. Some will say, Dave, Bob, that's really low, but a lot of times they're not counting, their own salary or their role they have in the business. They're paying everything. Net is left at the end of everything. The other key thing, man, I wouldn't mind deep diving a little more on,
Mhm.
like we could do an hour session on just like gross profit. Do you mind just like, you look at enough people's books, just teeing up an example in the trades to say this is literally what gross profit is, and this is exactly how we get it. Because I should have warned people, man, they should be writing some of this stuff down or watching it at a slow speed. So just give us an example how Bob would define gross profit.
Yeah, and I will. So before I jump in there, I just want to go back to that 20%. And
Mhm.
yes, you and I both agree, like that's a benchmark. It does not mean that you can't be higher, right?
Right.
Especially those mature businesses that are super efficient and like not reinvesting a lot, but just like squeezing
Mhm.
every last dollar. That could be, 30% plus,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
if you're making more, great. If you're not, we want to just sort of put that as a bottom line to
Mhm.
consider.
Yeah.
Now, with that, before I jump into gross profit, we do have hundreds of home services businesses that we work with where we have access to their numbers. And I
Mhm.
would say on average, they're not at 20%. They're maybe 12, 13%. Now, as you continue to grow, you go from a million to 3 million to 7 million. That
Mhm.
12% net income is a lot higher than it is at the $1 million level. So we
Right.
have to keep that in mind as well. As you grow, it's not as significant to get the 20%, but it is definitely a risk monitor to say,
Mhm.
hey, this is a safety net zone to have 20% or more. Okay, let's jump into gross profit.
Let's do
Again,
it.
my favorite number in all financial numbers. I love cash flow, super important to understand. I love revenue. I love to see that we're continuing to be able to evolve. But I think if you're looking for the number one pulse in your business of how it's performing, it's going to be on that gross profit number, but specifically on that percentage. So, what is that, right? So, there's really three things that come into, I guess two things that come into your gross profit. One is your revenue. Okay. So, dependent upon how you price your jobs, it's going to impact your gross profit. Depending on the volume of work that you do, it likely can have an impact on your gross profit. Okay. So, revenue is the number that we all barely understand. That's what we're charging for our products or our service.
Mhm.
The second component of what goes into gross profit is our cost of goods sold. So that's our cost of delivery. It's our direct costs, cost of goods sold, cost of sales. You'll see it labeled at a bunch of different ways. So they all mean the same thing. And what's in there is any cost that we incur to deliver our revenue. Okay. So and what I mean by that is the more revenue we do, the more costs we're going to incur here. And it should go relatively in line that, okay, if we have two sales, we're going to need twice as much product. If we have two sales,
Mhm.
we're going to need twice as much labor. So inside of that cost of goods sold number, we would have purchases, right? Products, materials, any materials in order to deliver our projects. We've got direct labor. So that would be any casual labor, because I see a lot of that in the home services business, especially if it's seasonal. That's in there. We've got our
Mhm.
salaries and our wages of our team that are working on the projects, not the
Mhm.
ones that are working at the office.
Right.
Those
For
are
the
part of
job.
it. Yeah, just specific to the job. And then we've got things that are maybe like a sales commission, maybe referrals. Sometimes I group in there, like if you've got a lead gen and you've got your lead gen locked down, it's the cost of acquiring leads. I throw that in there because those are all costs of acquiring a project and on
Mhm.
delivering the project. And the last one that I like to throw in there, well, we've got subcontractors too, right? If you're a
Sure.
landscaper, for example, and you're bringing in somebody to do some of the heavier work or the specialized work, subcontractors are also in there. The last one
Mhm.
I do throw in that sometimes people don't agree with me, but I don't care. It's what I do,
Yeah.
is vehicles,
Yeah.
right? So I throw vehicles in there, and this isn't for the business owner's vehicle that they're
Right.
driving around and maybe that they're selling. This is your vehicles and your equipment that are being used to go to and from job sites, to and from picking up supplies, the equipment that's being used on those job sites. So revenue minus that entire group gives
Mhm.
you your gross profit.
Okay.
And it's so important to understand gross profit. And maybe I'll give you some benchmarks too with
Done.
this,
Let's do
if
it.
that's good.
Yeah.
So I briefly mentioned electricians. So typically where we see a benchmark in like electrical work would be somewhere between 30 and 40%.
Okay.
Sometimes it's down to 25%, which is okay. Like that's an okay overall gross profit margin. But I like the higher performers. are getting up to 40%. Some things like landscaping might be somewhere around the 25 to 30%. Here's why this number has to be higher. Okay. It has to be
Yeah.
higher than, well, I'll explain why, and then you'll see why it has to be higher. Um, we also have these other costs that are our fixed costs and our overhead, right? These are our office rent, our insurance, our dues and subscriptions, our administrative staff, or maybe our business owners' vehicles, things like that. Um, we have to cover all of those costs.
Mhm.
And, typically overhead costs are somewhere between 15 and 25% of the overall business's revenue.
Mhm.
And I would hope in the home services business, especially if you're getting started, that number is down as low as 10%, 10 to
Mhm.
15%. But if you think of our gross profit number, if we're 20% and our overhead's 20%, that means you're not making profit.
Yep.
Okay. So our gross profit number has to be higher than our overhead percentage. And we want to continue to push that as high as possible. And we can
Mhm.
do this by creating efficiency, pricing better, systemizing, holding
Mhm.
people accountable, better negotiating supplier costs, things like that are reducing costs, increasing the price or the value proposition that we're able to demonstrate to our customers. That
Mhm.
changes the gap between what we're charging and what it's costing, which increases our profit margin. That is going to be the key to your long-term success and to multiply the financial results that your business gets.
So, Bob, this is absolutely fantastic, man. I honestly am surprised we're doing this for free because I was thinking, man, there's so much value here that I think, listeners are going to do themselves a service to really go through and listen again to what you're saying. But I kind of want to run back what I'm hearing and then you can correct if I'm screwing anything up. Okay. So
I'm
let's
sure you
say,
won't.
yeah, let's say this is a painter. Okay. I had a painting business for 10 years. What I always shot for, Bob, was a 50% gross profit. That was always my target. We didn't always get it. So I would get a, let's say, $5,000 paint job, and I would need to pay my painters. I'm a really bad painter, so I'd have to pay my painters. I'd have to buy the paint. If we had specific materials for that job, if we needed to get extra caulking because we were doing all the windows or whatever, I'd have to get 2 boxes of caulking. Okay, that's another $100, whatever. I'm going to add those up. I'm also going to have my vehicle payment, if I have one, for included in there as well. And I had my little sister as my sales rep. She would sell about 600 grand for me, Bob, in the summer, working part-time. She could go in and sell the socks off anyone. I'd pay her 8% commission on everything she sold. So Esther's commission fee would go in there as well. When you put all that together, let's actually throw one more in, Bob, too, because I was in a franchise. I was paying a royalty fee
Mhm.
too. If I'm correct, I would put that in as well to cost of goods sold. So you put all that together. Of my $5,000 paint job, I want $2,500 in gross profit. That was my target. And then from there, Bob, I'm paying my jobber subscription. I'm paying my marketing. I'm paying my operations production manager, and I'm paying my own self. And we want to whittle it all down. And I want that beautiful 20% profit. Did I nail that or did I screw that up?
No, you absolutely nailed it. But here's what I would say. Everyone who's in a different situation, or how that can apply to a different situation, right?
Yeah.
I think now I don't know your revenue numbers, but I'm assuming if it was like a summer painting project and your sister
Yep.
sold 600,000, which is
Yep.
awesome, by the way. She's a killer.
She was great. Yeah.
So good. But what I would say is, when we're still at the infancy of our business and we're getting started, our profit margins, especially if we're in the service business where we don't have a lot of products that are required, our margins should be higher, right?
Okay.
Especially if you're on the job site, right?
Right.
And you're the one who's providing that sort of oversight in there. And as somebody continues to grow, and this is just why I want to say this, because sometimes people will be super stressed and go, my profit margins are 30% and I am in that business. And what is it that he was doing that I wasn't doing? And it gets a little nerve-wracking. But the more you grow, the more, overhead oversight, project management, sales rep costs can sneak in there as you're scaling out, and you might not have a gunner like your sister. It might be
Yeah.
other multiple people, and they might have a higher percentage, or there might be some form of fixed salary. So, like, it's okay if you're less than that, but damn, aim for it.
Yeah.
Like that should be our goal, and we should be planning this out in advance to say, hey, we want to sell something where the margins are high, right?
Mm.
Because if we can get a high margin product or service and then we can scale the shit out of that too, like
Yeah.
that is exciting. Because
Yeah.
if your profit margins are high, you can reinvest so heavily into the next layer of advertising and marketing and team development. And now you've got a culture that's just everyone
Yeah.
wants to be part of it and nobody can compete with you, right? Like that's just such a great strategic move. So finding those higher
Yeah.
profit margin services is super important too. But yeah, you nailed it. You nailed it.
I'll give you one more, man, just to give the listeners some context. Like this was a business we were crushing on Google reviews. I did have Esther, excellent in sales. Bob, you'll like this. We really only focused on residential work. I came out of the student painting world where that was what we were taught, right? A lot of these wood trim jobs, we would bang off 2,500 bucks in a day, couple gallons of paint, like very systemized business model. If a general
Yeah.
contractor called, sorry, we're never touching that. Like I just got really good at knowing what to say yes to, but that took me 6, 7 years in the business. And the last thing, man, I'd love to hear your take on this. Every Friday, man, 2 hours I'd block out. I would job cost my paint job. So I know what was paint, what was materials. Do you mind touching on the power of job costing? Because if I'm betting 9 out of 10, maybe even 19 out of 20 listeners right now are not job costing their jobs.
Yeah, and I would say that there's really two major ways, and to your point, we need to be job costing.
Yeah.
And the two different ways, one is proactive job costing, right? Budgeting, putting in there, like, here's the budget of all the materials and everything and estimating it. The real power comes into the what actually happened, which I usually call back costing, which is going back after the job's been completed and saying, okay, we budgeted all of these job costs. I said it was going to be, 4 gallons of paint. It was 6. Expected it was going to be 10 hours. It was 14. So our profit margins are going to drop as our expectations aren't met. But then we learn from it and we go, okay, well, what happened? Did we underestimate our time that it was going to take? Is that on the salesperson or is that on the team for not being productive enough? We had extra product. Were we wasteful? Were those things, or was it just our estimate was off? And maybe our pricing was bad because we didn't price enough because the project was actually bigger than it should be. And this is where we learn.
Yeah.
This is where we're really learning. And, you talk to people who've been doing this process for years and it's just systematic, right?
Yeah.
And they don't necessarily have to focus so much on the nitty gritty of the back costing and the job costing, after a period of time, because
Yeah.
they look at their P&L, and if their P&L profit margins are stable, then they're like, great. But if they're not, if they start dropping, you have to jump into the job costing in detail and say, okay, what's not working? How do we
Yeah.
correct it?
So if you want to take the next step in scaling your business to the next level, you're going to want to check out our Scaling Blueprint program. We've worked with hundreds of home service business owners now all around the world, where we've actually built out the systems for them in their customized branding and provided them with coaching from our 7-figure coaching team. If you want to learn more about that opportunity, then go ahead and click the link right here. Now let's get back to the episode.
And if they're going up, it's almost the opposite. You go, okay, what is working and how do we duplicate it? Right.
Yeah.
So it's so important for people to have a handle. And I know, guys, honestly, financials are not for everybody. I get it. That's why I
Yeah.
did this in the first place.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why I got into this, is because I know it's a skill set that is absolutely necessary. And then people need support with it. So that's what we do, is we support people in getting their numbers so that you can really, as a strategic owner of your business, make conscious decisions, right? Here's our numbers. Yeah. This is what's working. This is what's not working. Here's how we tweak it to make it better.
Yeah, Bob, we're going to link up all your company's info so that listeners can, get quite a strong assist in working with you. one thing, man, I want to kind of take this is chat about owner pay. And I'll get to that in just a second. Selfishly, man, I want to ask you, I've been in home services for 16 years. Our coaching business is growing. I'm considering running a series going 0 to $1 million, do it in a year, hire a videographer, show the whole world, boom, boom, boom. This is what you do. I've got a few industries,
Mm.
man, I'm looking at. You see enough companies, books, HVAC, plumbing, it. What I'm kind of interested in, man, confidentially between me, you, and the whole world, is like the maid cleaning industry because it's recurring. But you see enough books. If you were like, hey,
Mhm.
Dave, entrepreneur, if you hung your hat on this industry, like just to like check it out. And I come from painting and exterior cleaning. That's kind of my background. Is there anywhere you're like seeing? Because man, like this is a whole nother convo, but AI coming into home services, it's happening. But goodness me, we still need our tradespeople on the ground for the next, I'm gonna just say, decade. So I still love those businesses. So any gold nuggets that you see of like, man, these owners here are like crushing it right now.
Yeah, there would be. So let me characterize it and then I'll give you a couple examples. But
Mhm.
I would say, the higher margin ones are the ones that are more labor focused versus product focused. Right.
Okay.
And I somewhat alluded to that where, the electrician who has the wiring, that's not like it's not cheap,
Yeah.
but it's as far as a percentage of the total price of the project, pretty low. Labor is a big component. And that's more so on the value billing side of things to say, this is the value we're bringing to the project. You're able to create higher margins in those service type elements because people know how much products cost,
Yeah.
right? They can Google it. They know how much a going rate is. But going rates just say, hey, the going rate is $70 an hour and it's going to take us 10 hours to do this project. But it could also take us 20 hours to do this project. They don't really know what the going amount of time should take.
Mhm.
So it's really just a formula. But anyone who's in the service type can really do a great job. So, and lawn maintenance businesses
Mhm.
can for sure hit it pretty hard. In our Canadian climate, though, sometimes a little bit more challenging. But then you get
Sure.
into the snow removal side on the opposite.
Mhm.
And then, there's the lawn clean, spring, fall cleanup sort of work that you can get into too.
Mhm.
Value based, this is how much it's worth to you. We create a really efficient process, super
Yeah.
profitable in all of those areas.
Mhm.
You mentioned the cleaning space.
Yeah.
And I would say, every time we look at a particular industry, you want to look at it and say, and like you've talked about niching down and finding a very specialized area, I would say you look at the cleaning space and you go, okay, where is the biggest pain point in the cleaning market? Like,
Mhm.
where are we finding it that people really need you? And a lot of times it's at the office, right?
Mhm.
So when you look at contracts in the cleaning space, it's people's offices because they're maybe cleaning their house, but they don't want to
Yeah.
clean their office, right? They don't want to do both sides, or maybe it's vice versa. But you
Mhm.
find a space where it's a little bit challenging to find good, reliable people. You give the
Mhm.
confidence that you're a good, reliable person to fill that space, and
Yeah.
the commercial cleaning space is a high in demand market right now, especially following COVID. Everybody's level of care when it
Yeah.
comes to cleanliness is much higher. So there, and again, service based, very
Yeah.
limited products. You might need vacuums and rags, but like everything else is labor. So you can
Mhm.
price a premium on a reliable business that is, people are leaving all their stuff at work,
Yeah.
confidential piece of information. They want somebody
Mhm.
they can trust in there. So
Yeah.
that is a market where you can premium bill if you can establish trust and how you approach it. So again, anything where I would say there's a higher value
Mhm.
market opportunity, electrical, I like electrical. You think of electrical when it comes to commercial work,
Mhm.
like the investment property work, the
Mhm.
commercial office space work, higher premiums there.
Mhm.
Emergency type work that's there,
Yeah.
higher rates. It's great. Same with plumbing. So again, service based versus product based. If I
Yeah.
had to build a home service business, it would be there.
I'm glad you said that, man, because we have now over 100 cleaning companies in our portfolio in our coaching business, and it's always like a discussion every week, man. Oh, I should do roofing or HVAC, like higher tickets, this and that. I'm like, I've had a cleaning business for 8 years now. We've done over 5,000 jobs, Bob, literally on what you said, just like better service, good reviews, friendly technicians. And our product cost per year, Bob, about 2%. Like literally,
Absolutely.
sodium hypochlorite, we call it detergent, is literally what we're getting, and a little bit of surfactant. And it's like the most beautiful for operations. And of course, there's go backs and coaching up our technicians and things. But I think it's a good lesson what you're hitting on. Like the grass isn't always greener with these, selling hot water tanks and turf installation. There's a heavy material cost that comes with those businesses. So thanks for camping on that.
Well, and I think you brought up another really good point that I think, if I were to start over again, I would continue to focus on this model. It is part of my model,
Mhm.
but it's the reoccurring business model.
Yeah.
Like the cleaning business, that's a weekly, bi-weekly sort of
Yeah.
situation with an easy upsell to be like, oh, you know what? You should probably a couple of your employees sort of mentioned that, wouldn't it be great if it was we were here more frequently, or if, there's this extra sort of hand soap left here or whatever, as a value add. I think the upsell opportunity in that personal service, personal touch business that's got a reoccurring model, like
Mhm.
that's where it's at. And
Yeah.
truthfully, from an exit strategy, people are going to pay a lot more for a reoccurring business model, reoccurring
Yeah.
revenue business model than a one-off HVAC sales,
Mhm.
right? Like HVAC is okay too, because you sell the furnace, it's probably got 10 years. They're going to have to sell another one. You
Yeah.
probably can sell the ongoing service that's maybe seasonally. So
Mhm.
that part's nice too. But if you're in the electrical space and you're doing new home builds, the margins aren't so great, and it's a
Yeah.
one-off project, and you have to hope that people are building homes.
Yeah.
And so I like the reoccurring business model. I think the cleaning space is fantastic, especially, and we didn't talk about this before, but you're naming all of the things, the trust factor, the
Yeah.
quality factor, answering the phone factor. Like, how many home service businesses have you reached out to where nobody answers the phone or doesn't return your
Mhm.
call? Like, start there. Like, what an
Yeah.
easy way to get business is just to answer your phone. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable. I feel like the competitive bar has been set so low in the home service
Yeah.
business. Like, there's lots of great ones, but there's so many that just don't even return calls that consumers are super frustrated. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I'll take the first person who will answer the call at this point,
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah,
it's a
man.
great business to be in.
Yeah, man, it's funny. We'll segue in a sec, but it's been like that for me since 2009. Like I started door knocking, and if I showed up on time, the franchise was called University First Class Painters, this nice red shirt. I'm a 19-year-old kid, and I show up tucked in shirt. Like I had already like won the job just for being there right on time. And it's still the same, Bob, in 2025. Like my
Yeah.
service manager shows up for an estimate in person. My God, thank you for being on time. It's like, to us, it's normal, but to the industry at large, it's not. So I think that that's a really great point you brought up there. Segueing to kind of close, man, I want to talk about owners pay. Like when I got my cleaning business up and going, I started with a $3,000 Astro van. Stuff probably costed Bob half of what it did now. I actually hustled up the company debt free, which I'm proud of. But as I kind of look now to move to the next level and all the companies we're coaching, I'm not sure if I'm changing my stance on, pay cash, live on rice and beans, go debt free. Like we're all shopping at the same grocery stores. I'm a dad now, like you are. We got bills to pay. I want to hear how you would go about structuring owners pay by way of percent of revenue. I want to hear your take on debt, and maybe in 5-10 minutes we can cruise out of here. But this is where I'd like to kind of park it.
Oh, David, you can't say 5, 10 minutes and hit me with this bomb.
I'll give you
Uh,
12.
no, it's all good. I have a lot to say, but I think it depends on the situation, and a lot of finance, and different financial strategies on where you're at in your life, where you're at in your business, what type of business you have. I think it all really comes down to we were all told that we needed to have cash in our bank when we were kids to be able to go out and buy something. If you don't have the money in your bank, don't buy it. And that works really great in getting a business off the ground. Super great.
Mhm.
It makes sure that you're hustling because you're working first and then buying later because it is very easy to get caught into the trap. But I think as we evolve as business owners and life starts to get a little bit more complicated, debt can be our friend in a really great way. So I'm not going to go any further with that. But if we use debt the right way, it can help support us with better cash flow in our business and fund future growth in a really great way. So my one friend, David Neagle, he's a mindset coach. He talks about the middle class mindset. And I feel like a lot of us were brought up in that mentality, unless we had a super high performance entrepreneurial parent, which I did not.
Yeah.
That it's, work hard, show up to work, which is great because that's not even happening anymore in the next generation in many cases. But show up, work hard, put your head down, put in your time, and everything will be okay. And I think there's a better way if we get really strategic once things have been a little bit established, right?
Yeah.
But definitely, cash accumulation and buying is not necessarily a bad thing. Let's talk about owner's pay.
Yeah.
First and foremost, there's a couple different ways to get paid as an owner. And is a lot of this market, are we Canadian, American?
Pretty split. I would say for at least for our coaching program, we're about 70% in the US and then
Okay.
30% Canada and even Australia now. But yeah, largely like North America works for our audience.
Yeah. So the tax systems, as much as people say, oh, we should go down to the US or, oh, Canada is better, they're very similar, right? The way that it works in Canada is that we go from 0 to 55% tax. And the more money we make as an individual, the more tax we pay. If we introduce a corporation, our small business tax rate's about 12%, depending on what province you live in. And you pay 12% flat tax in your business for the first 500,000. Anything above that's at 26%. But when you pull money out, you can pull it out as a salary or as a dividend. The salary is taxed higher, the business gets a deduction. A dividend, the business does not get a deduction, but it's taxed more favorably to you. In the US, a lot of businesses are structured as LLCs or S corps, which are flow-through entities that essentially has all of the business income taxed in the hands of the individual. Now, tax rates very similar, marginal. They go from 0 all the way up to about 50%, slightly lower than Canada. And if your tax rate starts to get up above 21%, that's when we can look at a corporate structure, which is a C corporation in the US, to fix the tax rate at 21% and avoid higher taxes. Now, in that case, when it's a flow through entity, we're just paying tax based on how much income the business makes. But if we go to a C corporation, we're the same thing. We can take a salary or we can take an owner's distribution like a dividend. We pay tax on both of those, but the company gets a deduction for salary. So that's how the system works. Australia, same thing. Marginal tax rate system. I don't know as much. I'm not as familiar with there, but North America consistently it's very similar. So the first thing I would say is that you need to know as a business owner what the most efficient way to get paid is, because one of the most costly components of our business is tax loss leakage. And that is paying more tax than we legally have to. And we've done a bunch of studies, 92% of businesses pay more tax than they legally have to. So the goal would be to make sure that your structure is right and that your compensation strategy is right, because those are the two biggest ones where we have lost opportunity. Now, let's talk about the amount. And the amount is important. And I don't necessarily think that you could make it performance based for sure. Like when we think of the most high performance, if you want to get paid more, you got to generate more, the business has got to be more successful. I would look at it, I would reverse engineer this. And I would say, I would approach it slightly different. I would say, okay, let's look at your personal spending. What are your mortgage, rent, car payments, potentially, groceries? What does all this look like on a weekly, monthly basis? And we need to be able to pull enough money out to support that lifestyle. Now, we can increase that lifestyle, but the objective for me would be to maintain that lifestyle as long as we possibly can. and make
Yeah.
sure that our business can cover that. And there's a book by Mike Mikulowicz called Profit First. I'm not
Yeah.
a huge advocate for Profit First because I think it complicates things. But one of the main philosophies that he had in there was this idea of um, psychology, psychological spending, which
Yeah.
means that if you have more cash in your bank account than what you need, you will spend it. So, what we want to do from a business perspective is take enough salary or dividends, depending on what's best for you, take that out of your business on a frequent basis to pay your bills. And don't take out any more. And it just gives you enough money to make sure that your bills are getting paid the way that you want to. Maybe some lifestyle, some fun in there too, build it
Sure.
in. But that's what I would do. And then let's just assume for a minute that your business is breaking even and all the money that you're earning in the business, you're taking out to spend personally.
Sure. Yep.
Okay. What we then do is we focus on growing the business and not changing the lifestyle. And what you can do is you take that incremental increase in the growing of the business, that extra surplus income, and you get
Mhm.
that invested in
Yeah.
something, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's looking at real estate, whether it's looking at index funds, something that's earning you money.
Mhm.
And as the earned income goes up from those passive investments, you can add that passive investment income to your lifestyle fund.
Nice. Good
So
way to
so
look at
let's
it.
right. So let's say it's $100 extra a month. You just
Mhm.
keep adding to your lifestyle that $100 of passive investment
Yeah.
income, and you're essentially putting all your principal away. It's getting invested. It's in and earning something, and you're
Mhm.
living off the benefits of that hard work. And I think that is the optimal way to structure personal finances and continue to drive success in the business.
So well said, man. I find just like I've been doing this 16 years, like I find such a divide in our industry of like you've got the contractors that are literally just getting by, like they usually have this owner operator business doing 200, 300 grand and they pay themselves 50, 60 grand, 70 grand and get by. But you see others, man, and it's the rarity, but they're more switched on. They pay themselves what they need, which in current day could be anywhere from 5 to 12 grand a month. Let's just depending on
Yep.
generally roughly in there. And then they take the excess, man, and they start investing in other stuff. For my story, it was getting into real estate rentals back in the day. For others, it could be getting into the stock market. But I think some of us, man, dream of this massive exit one day, which usually doesn't happen. And so I usually like to coach, build your company profitable, take excess and build like this long-term stable asset. Because in my opinion, man, I've been through insurance claims, lawsuits. Like when you run an operating company, shit just hits the fan, man, every year, and you
Does.
don't
Yep.
know if tomorrow's promised. So I've always taken cash flow, chucked it aside, even if it's not a lot, and just let that thing build. Because if my business goes away tomorrow, I've got this or I've got this property. Do you mind just touching on that level of delay gratification and be one of the smart ones, I think, in our industry?
Yeah, and it's tough, right?
It's
It is
tough.
tough,
Yeah.
especially as a new business owner. I have a good example. I had a new NFL player, was new to the league, came in and became a client this year, and right out of the gates, making good money. Not
Mhm.
like the multi-million-dollar contract
Yeah.
every year, like some of the stars are making, but almost making $1 million a year as an entry-level NFL
Yeah.
player, and which is great. And
Yeah.
I said, hey, be careful. Okay. Like, let's be financially responsible. You could get hurt next year. Right. And I don't know how long his contract is, but if you get hurt, you're not going to get renewed. So this is like a short term income supply that we need to just be careful with. And he was so financially responsible as a 20-year-old kid,
Mhm.
unbelievably financially mature. And I said, because and it's very relatable to entrepreneurship, because you get the new NFL player or NHL player, NBA or whatever, they go into the locker room and you've got all the stars that are pulling up in their Porsche, their
Yeah.
Ferrari, their Maserati, whatever it is. And they've got this mansion of a house, and you feel like you have to compete and demonstrate that you're successful too. Like
Yeah.
you're on the field, on the court, on the ice rink is shown that your success is on how you live your life outside.
Yeah.
And it's so much pressure, but that's not what we should be doing, right? And the reason is that more than half of those professional athletes are bankrupt by the time they're done playing their
Yeah.
professional sport and they have to start life over.
Wow.
And so that's not the right angle. And entrepreneurship, home service business, same thing. You go out, you're a landscaper, you have a great summer, you're like, oh shit, I want to spend some money. I worked really hard and I've earned this. It's like, yeah, but what does the fall look like? What does the winter look like for you? What do your projects look like? Because maybe you need that cash to support you to get to next year's big run as well. So delayed gratification is a great way to put it. Financially responsible, but I think, one of the greatest things that you're going to be able to do is build a business. Like this is your home run is on your business side of things. If you can invest in your business, you can take advantage of economic opportunities,
Yeah.
recessions, your competitors are shutting down their business. You can go in, capture their market share. If you're able to double your revenue, let's say you go from 1 million to 2 million, your profit margin's 50% like yours was. That means
Yeah.
you're making an extra $500,000 net income a year. That
Yeah.
puts your business value at $2.5 million more than it was last year at a
Yeah.
5 times earnings multiple. How
Mhm.
about that?
Yeah.
Versus, hey, I got a new Lamborghini that's got a
Yeah.
$2,500 loan payment, but I missed out on the opportunity for $2.5 million of growth. So
Yeah.
it's tough, but we need to be strategic. And it's not about, the showmanship of entrepreneurship. I think the most successful people are the ones who are discreet, but they're
Mhm.
just stocking away money
Yeah.
because, and just maybe to go back and tie in on my last point too, when we're talking about putting money away and living off of the passive investment income, when
Mhm.
we can do that, like when we could essentially take our business away and that passive investment is generating enough income to
Mhm.
support our lifestyle, that's financial freedom. That
Yeah.
means we never have to work again. And that
Yeah.
is powerful. So those are what the successful entrepreneurs are doing is they're trying to build that so that they get the freedom to make choices that
Yeah.
they wouldn't otherwise be able to make and they put themselves in a financial freedom space.
I love it, man. Two quick things to wrap up. I try go monthly, Bob, on a compound interest calculator. There's a favorite one of mine I should link up, but it's literally what you said. When you play around with different amounts, what it is in 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, it is just mind blowing. And one last thing, man, I hired a financial advisor about 2 years ago, and on the intake form, Dave, what is an acceptable rate of return? And I was like, hummed and hawed. I'm like, okay, I'll dumb it down, make it really conservative. So I put 40%. He called me. He's like, WTF, no one's getting, he's like, you're such an entrepreneur that's a low level goal. And exactly your point, man. I've always just seen massive returns when I go into my own business. So I think to sum up, like reinvest back in the main thing, but don't forget about the future and putting like a bit aside. It's not bad, I think, man, to take a little bit of chips off the table every month and just plan for the worst case scenario.
Absolutely.
Love it, man. Well, let's wrap. Let's tell us where people can find you, and maybe like for the $1 million, even the $500,000 a year business owner, man, that needs to get your professional expertise. What's kind of that next step coming off this show?
Yeah, I would say the first foundational component that every business owner needs is good numbers, right? So you got to have a bookkeeper. We have a full bookkeeping team that's there. And then, I talked about the structural way to save tax. You've got to make sure that your tax or that your organizational structure is optimized. And if you're putting cash away, there's a whole nother strategy for making sure that that cash is protected as well. You can find us at govrocpa.ca. And all of our social channels are at Gauvreau CPA. That's GAUVREAU. Happy to help. Check out our website, jump on a free call with our team, see if we can support you. We're really in the business to empower entrepreneurs to have the financial confidence to make informed decisions so you guys can change the world. So happy to help in any way we can.
Yeah, man. And you guys specialize with home service businesses. That's why I wanted to get you on. You're not doing
Yeah.
every Tom, Dick, and Harry's business. Like you specialize in home service, which I just love.
Yeah, we totally do. Yeah.
Love it, Bob. Well, appreciate you, brother. We'll link up where our listeners can find you, and keep doing what you're doing, man. Because even all your free stuff, doing stuff like this, brings so much value to people. And I think the high flyers, man, will reach out to you to get their numbers in order this year and beyond.
Sounds great, David. Great to be here, guys.